it's time to give the floor to our discussants, Professor Giacomo Ferrari, who will lead your queries and will also summarize the main points of the presentations you had the pleasure to listen to so far.
I would ask first if you have immediate questions to ask from the... Yes?
Question. First of all, I have to say congratulations for all the presenters, because that was, I came later, but what I catch is enough.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then my question goes straight to Igor. I like your presentation, but I had a question at the conclusion. You say language has to stay distant from politics. Is it possible? Because politics use this as tool of power.
Yeah.
And they say we have to introduce a Montenegrin language. Okay? What they are saying, we need unity. It's not the language itself they want, but they need unity. And I think that it's not easy for politicians to leave behind the language. Maybe we can say, I don't know, but for me it's so difficult to see politicians saying, yeah, okay, we have to keep a certain distance from our politics towards language, because if they do so, they will lose power. And if they don't control language, the tools of education, because education also is politically oriented. And if they don't dominate that, they don't control it, they lose power, and another people will come into control and take the power. I don't know, but his opinion, I'd like to listen from you how you find this conclusion and how you feel it is possible or not.
Yeah, well, it's not really possible, not fully, because the situation that we now have in the territory of former Yugoslavia with 4 new, let's say, languages, it was the result of the political decisions rather than the opinion of linguists. So it was politically oriented. When I gave this conclusion, I had in mind the current situation in Montenegro. Now, Montenegro has started negotiations with the European Union for membership, and in the months, it was February, March, April, the EU asked for some constitutional changes in order to improve the situation in the judiciary. And the authorities needed also the support of the opposition, because 2/3 majority was necessary is needed to have the constitutional changes in the parliament. The opposition said, we will give you support provided Serbian becomes the official language in Montenegro. So it goes, so these constitutional changes are crucial in the fight against corruption, organized crime, improving the work of the judiciary, prosecutors' offices, and so on. But they didn't want to give their support just because of the language issue, which is not the biggest problem in Montenegro at all. I mean, everybody, the previous solution, when I said that co-official languages are Serbian, Croatian, Albanian, Bosnian, it was also agreed by all political parties. Then last year they agreed to call the subject in schools Montenegrin Dash, these 3 languages. It was also a political decision, an agreement between the government and the opposition. And then the opposition said, we are happy now, we're not going to blackmail you anymore, but now a new situation has come up and now they're again playing with the language, which on the other hand is very good for the government, because it turns the attention of the people from the crucial economic, social problems to, they will probably now start talking about the flag or the national anthem and things like that. And just
Symbols.
forget these
Yeah.
symbols, and just forget about the crucial issues in the country. And at the same time, they forget that they themselves agreed about the rules. So when I said we cannot get rid of politics completely, but at least the influence of politics, once the decision is made, can be reduced to the minimum, and focus should be shifted to some other important aspects.
If you can add something, Tatiana, please.
Okay, no, go on.
Okay. Thank you, Igor. Tatiana, please. I've listened also very well to your speech, and I like this difference you did. And for me, I think that we have to add something else, a word like tolerance, because I've seen Huntington saying that conflicts will remain cultural. Because I'm different from you, I don't understand you, then I start to fight you. I don't need to understand you first. I don't be tolerant. If I'm tactile, I touch you, you start to say, this guy is not polite. But you don't want to be tolerant. Ask first what is happening to him to touch me, and don't leave the space, the privacy, you say. He doesn't leave a privacy space. He's touching me. He doesn't know me. Why he's touching me? I think another word is very important on this speech. It has to be tolerance. Because if we teach our students to be tolerant with different culture, they will learn automatically. Rather than teaching them that you have to know that British are like this, like Russia like this, and they're creating stereotypes. Like they will start to say, yeah, this guy like this guy like this I know. But if you say, you have to be tolerant. If you see a different behavior, you have to tolerate it and start from there to learn how to deal with that person. Not first to see him as not polite or polite, whatever it is, but first to have a chance to learn how to deal with that person. And if we, in the globalized world, we can teach people to be more tolerant towards other cultures, maybe we'll find peace in our world. Because I think highlighting differences will be difficult for peace in our world.
You're absolutely right. Thank you very much for your comments. But I just didn't mention that. But from my point of view, all this approach, which is based on this interdisciplinary approach, anthropocentric, which I call it approach, is aimed at this, how to say, at better understanding. It shows them, it is, how to say, it makes this process of learning and teaching conscious, so people understand why. And when they understand why, from my point of view, they become tolerant because they see that it is just, there is the logic in this behavior, yeah? It is very important. So we don't, if we don't learn, if we don't teach our students to these differences and to this understanding, it is very difficult to communicate. I can give you one interesting example from my experience when I was just trying to make my student, actually, to get them use not only do it, open the door, pass me that, and so on. And I wanted them to use this expression, very nice expression, which I like very much. Would you mind doing that? You know, the reaction of one of my students was, she said, but why do you teach us this model? Because like that, only princesses might speak, not normal, ordinary people, yeah? And it is very difficult to somehow to enforce, yes, these models without understanding. But with understanding, the priority, yes, is respect of other person's space. And actually, it is very important to show that it works not only on verbal, it concerns not only verbal, but non-verbal communication. There are very interesting researches by Brosnahan, who gives with figures. He takes all Edgar Hall's distances and show the difference in distance. So I can't sit like that if my person is not eager, whom I can hug, yeah, but English person, so I should be a little bit like that. And this is not the lack of interest, it is just the lack of this space which exists in this culture, and we should value it. You understand that you should keep distance everywhere, yeah? Just sitting, shaking hands, and so on, and also on the verbal level, yes? That is conscious approach to communication, and will be more tolerant because we understand that people are different. Just not his personal attitude to me that he wants to keep distance, to sit a little bit further, yeah? But it is cultural difference, and when we understand it, we become more tolerant.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, I always emphasize this fact that you shouldn't judge, shouldn't be too fast to judge. And English people are so cold, and because the aspect of emotions is also very interesting. I didn't have time to touch it, but I have a lot of examples taken from literature, yeah, to demonstrate, illustrate how people behave. They can smile in a dramatic situation because it is very valuable to show that this positive attitude to life, to see the bright side of the cloud, not to be so gloomy and pessimistic as Russian people do. Also differences, and when we understand these differences, we don't judge very fast, yeah, so we teach tolerance in this way. But thank you, your comment is really very precious.
Thank you. Now,
A quick comment, if I may.
please.
So of course, I do support your opinion, and I totally agree. If I could just sort of add, again, from the teacher's point of view, because you are absolutely raising relevant questions. Okay, this is me, this is how I behave, this is I don't want to be like you. This is me, this is fine. Now, from the teacher's perspective, that is very challenging. What do you do? How do you make this classroom work? If I can tell you my personal opinion and what I normally do, again, the focus of the emphasis is on the word awareness raising. So in intercultural contexts, we need to be aware of each other. So, for example, if you do not feel comfortable, bowing in front of a Japanese speaker because that's not what you're comfortable with, you do not have to do that. No, that's absolutely fine. But for example, to show some kind of a of acknowledgement or recognition of the fact that, okay, this is what Japanese people do to each other. You can, for example, I don't know, nod, or you can do something. So this is what I encourage my students to do. Be observant, see how people communicate, how they interact, and find a way to accommodate things. This is how it has to work. Of course, you should not change your attitude. If you're directing, this is not, if you're a Russian speaker, you really, these are your values, that's your world. Of course, you're not going to change your, worldview completely when you speak English.
Just
and whatever.
recommendation if you want.
Precisely. So if you want, but adapt, be observant, see how people interact, how people communicate, be flexible, and find a way that works for you, that you're comfortable with, and of course that your interlocutor would recognize, yeah, okay, this person is accommodating. So as an educator, the key word when I, let's say, choose material or find, try to find what the focus of or what the main learning outcome of my program should be, I would say awareness raising. And probably the answer to your question. Tolerance, by all means, that's a big word, absolutely big, but awareness raising.
It should be a two-way process, yeah?
Yes.
Because very often my students ask me, okay, so you insist that we should lose our personality to adjust to English style of communication, but do English people know that Russian people are different? I think that, yes, it should be a two-way, how to say, process. Yes, and that contributes to understanding.
Thank you. Monica, would you like to come up with some kind of comment?
Yes, comment or question. Igor, I have a question, which is the right meaning of genetic when you speak about language identity, and you can clarify this concept because it's a big concept.
I just took it from literature. It actually means the origin of the language in terms of But I used the term, so I just took it from that.
Etymological.
Etymological,
Structure.
Structure. So,
actually, I had a comment on your comment and on your comment. I mean, on all these comments concerning tolerance and awareness, because I think that there is some kind of interrelationship or dialectical relationship between awareness and tolerance.
Yes.
People have a natural tendency to be afraid of something they don't know. So, and I was thinking of a situation actually that we had in 2009 in Poland, when a group of Nigerian men was stopped by Polish police. Well, they were selling something in Warsaw, in the stadium. And then actually some kind of fight or brawl started, and one of these men was killed. And then the reason why I was interested in that was the media coverage of the whole situation. But what was interesting is that, well, the police understood their behavior as violent and threatening. And then we had these discussions, I mean, we had these different specialists in intercultural communication discussing the situation, and whereas from their perspective, these Nigerian men, the behavior wasn't violent. I mean, that was their normal way of, speaking with a raised voice,
Expressive.
body language, etc. So you actually had a clash here, which ended kind of tragically. Yes, but I think it obviously points to the importance of intercultural communication and teaching intercultural communication. Another thing is how you bring it from the level of, well, like teaching or university education or school education to the level of society and how it's applied by an average Smith or Kowalski in Poland, and how you do it. I don't know, would you organize intercultural communication courses for the police?
Yes.
Or maybe it would be sort of worth considering.
Yes.
And another thing I was thinking about in connection with that thing was is teaching and the challenges. You said the challenges that teachers have.
Yes.
That we have these, I would say, huge Erasmus exchange, and students coming from Spain or from Turkey. And then as a teacher, my colleagues complain all the time because I'm responsible for Erasmus. So all these students come to me with their problems that they have with my colleague. And my colleagues come to me telling me about problems they have with students, complaining that they are late for classes or that they do not do this or they do this, etc. So I think that's another huge area that requires sort of looking at.
Yes,
And how to cope with that at the level of student-teacher relationship.
Yes.
May I ask? So what I was talking about, actually, I was talking about the English language, the teaching culture in the English language classroom. So how to teach the language properly in order to be able to speak according to this communicative style, which I find this is the highest level of communicative linguistic skills, actually, to teach, not only to use the English words and English grammar, but to be able to follow the stylistic also characteristic. Yeah? But your comment was very interesting. It concerns the teaching of intercultural communication in general. On one of my lectures, which I was given to the, adult, grown-up, not students, but in another, it was evening course, Linguistic University, one of my students who was from Caucasus, from this Ossetian Republic, which we have this conflict with Georgia and so on, and he said that this course was for him eye-opening, and it should be taught at school. So this is a very interesting point. We should now, in our multicultural world, with all this migration and so on, if we start doing it at school, so even the policeman will have at least some knowledge, yeah, because he can't get the position of policeman without school education. At least could be aware. So all the society would be aware of these cultural differences and have this cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness.
Thank you very much. Now,
It is absolutely, in addition to what Tanya just said, teaching culture within language curricula, absolutely yes. No other way of doing it. But intercultural communication, the question that you raised, in my opinion, that should be cross-curricular. In any subject that you teach, there should be a component. Absolutely at school. So it is a major, again, going back to the document that I referred to, major educational effort needed. it is skills-based. Again, going back to the UK model that I said, I believe it is quite effective. I teach one of the units that I teach on intercultural communication. Very skill, not exclusively, of course, at the university level. There has to be the academic component, the content component, but it is a skill. You develop the skill the way you develop the skill, so it has to be focused on that. Just a very quick, should police officer, yes, everybody should have, absolutely, to be an effective communicator. So if you're not, you know, it should be simply, you know, intercultural communication is a major skill, essentially. To be an effective communicator, to function on a daily basis, you need to be fully aware. So raising awareness, how and why, is $1 million question, but yes.
Yeah.
Go back to the rest, wanted to say something. Yeah.
Thank you. Just carrying on from that, thank you for your presentation. It's really very fascinating. I learned a lot as well about different areas I didn't know, and also the comments as well are very insightful. I wondered if the possibility of this intercultural learning in all school would maybe have the idea of learning more about self-awareness before or during this intercultural, maybe as part of the process, because at least from being British and also living in Hungary for many years, there are intra-national differences between cities, between towns, between people, between members of the same family, that there are differences between ourselves that I think need to be better recognised and people be more aware of during the course of learning about others.
Aware of.
So,
Keyword you just said. To be aware of.
I thought this kind of reflexivity or self-reflexivity and self-awareness is, and I think this is what you're also talking about, to be aware of what you do as well as what other people do.
Yeah, so I always say, just a small comment, I always say to my students that learning another culture, you will learn more about ourselves.
Yeah.
Two-way street, exactly.
Okay.
And I just, I just wanted, and also just within that, and I think that this links to your presentation as well, Igor, about power and power relations. I feel that was a bit missing in the, I think it's there in all of your presentations, perhaps missing about this, you know, you can take the politics or reduce the politics, but you can't reduce the power of even the charter itself. And I wondered about, and even in these communication, you know, if the Russian is coming as a migrant to the UK without, as a young person without a job, you know, trying to find a job here, the power relations are going to be very different from a Russian person who has a highly educated and is coming to the UK for a job. So power relations will always be there. And with this charter, I wondered, yeah, obviously we'll never get rid of the power of it, but what is the power of the charter itself? And I wondered did you ever, I know you're part of it, and it seems like a very interesting framework and document, but do you sometimes wonder if it has a purpose, if it was taken away, would that remove the politics and of that language, and, you know, would it make a difference if it wasn't there?
Yeah, it would be much worse actually, because there is a power in the charter. Because when we in the committee, when we complete the report and we give findings and recommendations, and that goes to the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, which has a strong influence, and the countries sometimes object to our findings and object to our recommendations because they find it too strict or too inappropriate. But you know, for example, when we criticize a country, we normally say for the first time, we encourage the authorities to do that. If they don't do that next time, we urge the authorities. The third time, we say we strongly urge. And when we say we strongly urge, that actually means you have to do it or you'll be sort of punished. You have to deal with the Committee of Ministers, something like that. So, you know, this is a way to first raise awareness in the among the authorities to do something. If they still reject to do that, then we have some kind of implicit pressure that it has to be done. It has negative consequences in terms of the negative image of the country in the Council of Europe. We had, for example, a Minister of Minorities who said that for the gay population, he said that the existence of a single gay person in Montenegro is bad news for Montenegro. And he said that in the middle of the Council of Europe, and everybody in the Council of Europe knew that, everybody was shocked, and they asked the authorities to get a new minister. That just didn't want to communicate with this person, you know. So there is, we can do the same with the charter, you know. So charter is a powerful tool, really. As you can see, we don't look only into the language itself, but use of language in all spheres of life.
Thank you very much. Would you like to come up with...
No, I think most of my point I was going to make was been addressed in many respects. It's just lots of tensions have been thrown up in the discussions, and there's this one tension about the agency, the EU, and how these policies are carried forward. Vanna talking about learning more languages, and people are there talking about promoting regional and minority languages. But again, that sort of does create that political tension, doesn't it? And as a Hispanist, we can see in, for example, in Catalonia, the use of a minority language for the exclusion of others rather than the incorporation of other people, and that creates that tension within the different agencies within the EU, and of course it has that long, quite significant political impact on relations.
And that's why the committee of experts produced a very long report for Spain, I think 150 pages, which took us 2 days to discuss.
Right.
Just because of
This
this.
is a very good example of Albania in Montenegro. Is it for inclusion or exclusion purposes? If you can literally from preschool education up to the university education, you can be educated in Albanian as a medium of instruction. Is it for inclusion or exclusion purposes? Precisely as you have a very good example of Spain and Catalonia that you just gave. Precisely, yeah.
Thank you. Did you now?
A few words. I think that the questions that I raised at the beginning still stand there with a more elaborated discussion, but still are big questions, and probably they have no definite solution. I heard with pleasure that most of us are talking of not only of language as it is, but as of cultural heritage, and knowledge of cultural differences, as Tatiana said. And I deeply appreciate the proposal, Tatiana's proposal of setting a set of social-cultural variables and then building some rules, conversion rules, form rules. And here I have a question. I have a question at the end of this this contribution. Does politeness exhaust all the such variables, or are there also some other type of variables? Politeness is very important because the face is in question, but probably there are other things. Few words on tolerance. This relates also to Tatiana's contribution. Tolerance is a virtue, we know, but it is also in mathematical terms. That means that our ability, logical ability, of giving different interpretations of the same thing. So if I find something that I don't understand, instead of rejecting, I try to find the rules to interpret it. So this is, I think that relating tolerance as virtue to tolerance as a mental process of interpretation should be the way of doing that thing. Furthermore, we have at hand a big instrument now, a big tool to know one another. Internet. We have at our disposal any kind of cultural heritage repository to know other countries, to know other people. And as a computational linguist, I can tell you that there is also a possibility of picking up from internet linguistic formulas, linguistic way of interactions, directly from how people speak, type, and on the internet. Internet is, I think, is doomed to become a powerful way of education. Last item, multilingualism. Multilingualism is a strong item in many countries of Europe. And I have the Italian law received all the recommendations of the European Community, but added, in order to define a minority, added one thing: self-awareness. So the article, I think Article 2 or 3, say that a community is a minority community if they are aware to be a minority community, otherwise they aren't. Obviously everybody became aware because of the money they received to protect and promote their language. I have a question about standard Montenegrin. Human history is rich of how to say, of standard languages imposed by policy. This is the case of Hebrew, and it works. This is the case of Greek, and it worked at a half. I mean, all the patriots, Greek patriots, wanted that the language was a very accurate language, Kataressa, but they failed. I mean, people speak something else. But Montenegrin seems to seem very close to Minorsk, the case in Norway, where people is. And in that case, probably, again, the technological tool, media, television, may play an important role. Exactly, and this is my last word, exactly as it happened for Italian. When Italy was united, 2% of people spoke Italian. The other didn't know a word of Italian, only that. And this situation went on until television was up. And from 38% or 42, I don't remember, it's now 90 and something percent. So communication tools, media are very important to promote the language. This is
yeah. Well, in the Montenegrin case, they do not promote the new standard version. They do not. So that's why I think they will have to drop it so late.
Okay, so I think we are a bit behind the schedule because we have lunchtime now. I thank you, all of you, to be here and share your knowledge and have the patience to be with and listen to our speakers. And to the speakers, I also thank you very much for your challenging speeches and also discussions. Thank you very much.
Please come and join us for this part 2 of this session, which is after the lunch break.
Which is after.